This video will show the process of using drawing fluid to create a compelling screen print. Here is my design on my screen. I've done this in drawing fluid onto the screen in 2 layers. I've applied this onto the screen with a round brush. You want this to be thick enough to survive the next step, which is applying the screen filler. Here I'm going to apply my screen filler, so you need to make sure it's fully mixed up first. So I'm both shaking it a bit, and I will also be mixing it with the with a stick too. So screen filler looks like that. Okay, and then what I'll be doing is putting a line of this at the top of my screen, and I will then use the squeegee to squeegee it across in one pass over my drawing fluid, and the drawing fluid should be then resisting the screen filler, and then I'll let this entire thing dry before I then try to wash off the drawing fluid. Okay, so you can see they're very different colors too. This is a really warm, kind of brownish red. Drawing fluid is blue. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to try to dab a line of this at the top. Okay. That should hopefully be enough. Now you want to avoid this passing through your screen. Okay, so I'm gonna give it a try. Nope. All right, there's that step. It's a little nerve-wracking. Need to let this dry now, but it seems like my drawing has stayed intact. Okay, so here you can see my screen. I did the layer of my screen filler over my drawing. If I lift this up for you guys to see, you can see that my drawing is coming through. There's a few spots that I'll have to repair a little bit, but I can just go back in and paint on a little screen filler to fill that back in. So next step, I'm going to take this and I'm going to wash off the drawing fluid. That's just going to leave my screen filler, and that will leave areas where when I run ink over my screen, it can go through where I had drawn before, and it's going to create my print that way. So next step, wash off the screen, and then I'll come back in and repair a few bits. To wash off the drawing fluid, use only water and go over the surface gently with your finger. Emphasis on being very gentle here. Okay, my screen is all dry. The drawing fluid worked quite well. I do see some sections I want to go back into this a little bit, go back in and add like a tiny bit more pattern. I'm going to be going in with the screen filler to add some of this pattern back in. So I'm going to take this first. I'm going to make sure that I shake this up quite a bit. Okay, make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. This is a liquid that can separate, and so you need to make sure that it's fully all mixed together. Okay, and now what I'm going to do, going to take some of that screen filler onto my brush, and I'm going to load my brush up, and I'm going to use this exactly as I would just like a paint. Okay, so if I get like a huge glob on my brush, that's going to kind of splat out across the surface. If I want to try to get something like a fine line, I both want to twirl my round brush in some of this screen filler and then make sure that there's not a ton of excess on the tip here. So now I'm going to go in and add back in some pattern into this area. And you don't need this to be super, super thick, but you do want this to appear to be opaque. So if it's really translucent, there's a likelihood there that some of that ink is going to go through that area. So you can go over it a couple of times, but if you want, if you want to create, essentially I'm creating little passages where the ink is not going to be coming through here. So you need to make sure that it's not see-through, okay? So you can use this screen filler exactly as I'm using it to make these little touch-ups. If you want to go in, for example, and like smooth out an area, like for example, there's areas on my snake that got a little rough in here. I kind of like that texture, but if I wanted it to be smooth, I could go in with the screen filler and kind of smooth that out. Okay, all right, maybe one more line in here, okay? I feel pretty satisfied with this now, so now I'm gonna let this dry completely. I'm going to tape the opposite side with some packing tape to block off these areas of exposed screen, and then I'll be ready. Once this is totally dry, I'll be ready to print. The last step before printing is to tape off areas of your screen that you do not want ink to pass through. Tape off on the side that you will be putting the ink through, so have that mesh side down. And you just want this to be in areas where you don't want ink to go, so don't tape off over your drawing. Now we're to the printing stage, so I am mixing my screen printing ink. I am using a palette knife to dab that off at the very top of my screen. You want to make sure that you do this at the top of the screen and that you're not overlapping the ink onto your design yet, because that can seep through onto your paper or cloth, whatever you have underneath. I'm then going to be using the squeegee, and just like the kind of screen filler pull, I'm going to take my squeegee, I'm going to have it at about a 60-degree angle, and I'm then going to pull, and I'm going to pull with a nice amount of force. You then lift up your screen and you do what's called a flood back. Also, Tyler's helping me here, so that's really nice when you have a little buddy to help you pull out your print. With the flood, you're just putting the ink back at the top of the screen, but you do not use a forceful pull for the flood. So you just flood that ink back up to the top so you're ready for the next print. And I'm going to pull again, okay? Then you lift. Tyler's going to grab it now, which is really nice. You flood the ink back lightly. And there's a really nice print. So that's showing the process, everybody. We'll definitely be going over this in class too. You can see this is a pretty quick turnaround. You can make a lot of prints kind of all at once. You kind of just get in the flow of it. This is also something that you don't want to do for a really, really extended amount of time with this ink because it is water-based. It is going to start to dry a bit, so you want to be ready to print. Here's my final print versus my initial screen design that I created. This medium has a lot of potential, so I hope you all enjoy it.